Welcome back. I'm Barry Craig. My guest today is trying to preserve a very important piece of Paducah history, and he needs our help. He is Manuel Jones, and he is preserving a very rare Rosenthal school, the Union Station School here in Paducah. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
Let's begin by explaining to the viewers what a Rosenthal school was.
Rosenwald schools are schools that were built by the assistance of Mr. Rosenwald, which is Sears and Roebuck CEO, during the time that Booker T. Washington ran Tuskegee Institute. He asked Mr. Rosenwald for assistance in restoring schools.
His name is Julius Rosenwald.
Julius Rosenwald.
Right. And this was during the time of segregation. When
of course, right after the Civil War.
Right. And so he was a philanthropist,
yes,
and he donated money to build these schools throughout the South and the border states.
Yes, sir.
And McCracken County, I believe you told me, had 4.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And so they were, which ones?
They would be Sanders, of course, Woodlawn, Granville, and Union Station.
And Union Station is the one that's left.
Yes, sir.
Well, now, how did you get involved in this? Are you from Paducah originally?
Yes, sir.
And you were a career Navy man?
Yes.
And you came back home, and what sparked your interest in saving this old school?
Well, I grew up there, so having attended the school, and Mrs. Rogers was our teacher, Miss Alice C. Rogers, and she was a wonderful teacher, and I thought it should be a tribute to her to preserve the school. And also, children in the neighborhood did not have a place to play. So ball grounds to play baseball, things like that, and just to play like children have in the city. You have Noble Park in the city, but you have no county park. We had Stuart Nelson Park, but that's still in the city. Well, it was maybe in the county limits, but it was far from out there at Union Station. So,
well, now specifically, tell us where this school is.
It's at 3138 Roosevelt Street, aka Flagman Street, and that is just off of Lane Road, which is between Pool Road and Husband Roads. It's in the east quadrant of McCracken County.
And I guess it was called Flagman Street because nearest the railroad?
Well, yes, sir. Mr. Tom Lunn owns a lot of property around the place, so he had the street named Flagman on the maps because of that.
Of the railroad connection.
Because of the railroad connection.
Right. Well, describe the school when you were a pupil. What grades did you go to there?
1 through 8.
1 through 8. Yes. Well, describe the school when you were a young person going there.
It was a wonderful school. It was the only one I knew. So if you're a young person going to school, it's the greatest school.
Made of wood, of course.
Of course, sir.
And I'm assuming it would have had electricity when you went to school.
No, it did not have electricity.
It did not.
It did not have electricity. That's one of the points why Mr. Samuel Smith, the administrator of the Rosenwald Fund from Tennessee, required the building to be set on the points of the compass so students could see their texts with the sunlight coming through the east side of the building and the west side of the building.
Wow. And so was it heated with a wood stove?
Wood stove, just a wood burning stove, and that's just a small building, but it did very well.
So you left Paducah and in your Navy career.
Yes.
Did you think about the school when you were away in the Navy?
Yes, I did. But I was in and out of Paducah quite a bit when I was in service, and purchased a lot near the school. I couldn't get the school; it didn't have the money to purchase the property where the school building was sitting on at the time. So I got a lot near to it, which is parcel 26, 25 rather than 26, but not 25, but 26. And this lot is the one that is now in Union Station School Historic Park name. And as soon as we purchased parcels 23 and 24, which the building sits on, then it would be they would be transferred into the nonprofit Union Station School Historic Park.
Now, right now, I believe you told me you need at least $600
yes,
to make the purchase. Now, that money would go for what?
It would be it would go toward what we've already raised, which is $2,200, for the deposit that Mr. Lund requires, 10% deposit, and then the title of the property would transfer to Union Station School Historic Park, and then we can have control over the property and start the restoration of it.
And what do you hope in the end, let's dream a minute, what would you like to see it become when this is all finished?
A Kentucky State Park, which is a Rosenwald School park, that would show the Rosenwald schools and all the history of them, not just the ones in Kentucky, but the rest of the 150 that was built in Kentucky, and the 5,000 that was built in the U.S. from Virginia to Texas.
Now, there's a professor at the University of Louisville who's done some research in this, Alistine.
It's Alistine Turley Adams.
Right.
Yes.
And she has
Dr.
determined there were, how many did you say in Kentucky?
About 150 to 151.
Right, right.
Yes,
well, the one I'm most familiar with
Yes,
is over in Logan County in Russellville.
Yes.
There's a Rosenwald School that was transported to the school grounds
Yes.
of the Logan County High School.
Yes,
But
sir.
I think it would be so interesting that this one is where it was originally, where you remembered it.
Yes,
there.
sir.
Now, describe for our viewers what the building looks like today.
It's in not too good a condition presently, and we want to restore it back to what it looked like in 1966 when it closed, when it had its last semester.
And, but is it structurally sound as far as you know?
Well, there's a major portion of it that is still structurally sound, but it is still worth restoring. It's enough of it there to determine that it was a Rosenwald School, and it was well built because it's still standing over all these years.
Oh, right. Yeah.
More than 80 years.
So describe the school. It had one classroom
Yes, sir.
and then what, cloakrooms? And
A cloakroom for the boys and girls.
Right.
And a kitchen.
And a kitchen. So you all had lunch there.
Yes, sir.
What did you have for lunch?
Well, it was generally food we brought there. You know, some days there would be ladies that would cook whenever they had events there, but just on a daily basis, you would generally bring your lunch.
What kind of events would they have?
Classroom events like spelling contests, things like this.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's wonderful. Well, in 1966 when it closed, did it have electricity then?
I'm not sure about it, but I don't think it did.
Wow.
I'd have to really check.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, just again, if you can, just think back, describe the school in detail for the viewers. When you were a kid going to that school, what did it look like? I mean, just describe it.
It looked very sound. The building, you know, as a child growing up, you look at a building, you just see the structure, but you're not able to describe it like an architect or anything like that.
Right.
But
painted white, I guess?
Yes, sir. It was a light color, and the colors inside were bright colors, pastels, but I don't know if they used those words to describe the colors. I had to look at the Rosenwald papers, but the walls had to be a light color so that because they didn't have electricity to light the building.
Right, to reflect
Those
the
are
light.
requirements that are stated in Bulletin 3 about the schools.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned before the show began about bulletins 1, 2, and 3. What were these, describing how these schools were to be built?
Yes, sir. How they had to be built, how the foundations had to be laid out, had to be set, all the structure of the building. The windows had to be a certain height from the top of the walls so that most of the sunlight could come through the east side and the west side for the students to see their texts.
Well, were there different styles of these schools?
Yes, there were. This was just a one-teacher school, they call them, and there were different ones. Some are 2-teacher and 3-teacher, but this one was a one-teacher school.
Are there any of the, how many are left, do you know?
I don't really know, so I have to pull that up.
But probably not very many.
Not too many.
Right. The porch, I can see we have here's the floor plan here.
All right, sir.
The community room. What did you all do in the community room?
That would be the classroom.
Okay. No, the classroom is the big one. There's a little room down here. There's the porch the 2 cloakrooms and the community room.
That's
Is that the
kitchen.
That's the kitchen. Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. And well, whose job was it to bring in wood for the stove? Did the teacher do that, or did the students?
Well, the teacher did it at times, and the students also.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So in the summer months, you all played baseball and enjoyed the playground?
Well, yes, we did. It was a little small spot we had. It was, you know, it was wonderful.
Well, okay, so you come back from service, come back out of the Navy, and you decide to preserve this school.
Yes, sir.
Take us through that. I wouldn't know how to preserve a building. Wouldn't have any idea how to do this. So how did you just decide, okay, this is where I'm going to start? How did you start to preserve this building?
Well, we didn't start preserving it because it didn't own it. But the idea was...
Yeah, that's what I meant, the idea. So what steps did you take to get the ball rolling?
Well, first up, purchased that lot in those parcels. There was approximately 2 acres aside to Rosenwald schools, community schools in the rural portions of the counties. That was a requirement that schools had 2 acres of ground.
Right.
And these parcels, of course, in this spot were divided into 9 lots. And the lot that I was able to purchase, one of the lots, which allowed the property around it not to be all converted to industry. So Mr. Tom Lund agreed to allow it to go forward, and he's been very patient about it. So
well, the research you did, where did you do the research to find out about these schools?
I didn't know at the time that it was a Rosenwald School. I just knew that it was my teacher, Mrs. Rogers, was a good teacher, and this was to be a tribute to her.
Right.
And then I found out about the other 5 teachers that Mrs. Ellie Peoples told me about, and I said, well, then I found out it was a Rosenwald School. And I said, well, we have something larger than myself.
Who were the other teachers, do you recall?
There was I have to look at the list on them. There were 5 teachers, but I think there was I'm trying to think of their names. I don't recall them, but I have them on a list that can be pulled up.
Okay. Did you talk to other people who were students there, pupils there?
Yes, I have. There's some, well, Mrs. Ellie Peoples attended class there. Many family members attended class there. Dr. Lottie Leishon is a retired school teacher out in Phoenix, Arizona. She attended there, and she's written a book about the place called Pool Road, and it's mentioned in her text.
Where could you get that? Was it in the public library?
Yes, sir.
Is it in special collections, or can you check it out?
It would be in the special collections.
In special collections. Well, that's interesting. So probably through the years, several people, hundreds, I guess, went to this school.
They have. I've been in the Board of Education office pulling up some of the records of the attendance back even when my dad attended school there, and other cousins that attended school there. But those are not on digital. You can't put them up on your computer. So Mrs. Plotz there in the office has allowed me to make copies of these are just survey forms, but the actual records, you can't look at those of anyone's grades or anything like that.
Well, no, yeah. So the first, obviously, part of this would be to clean it up, and then what would you have, an architect look at it to see
Yes, sir.
what you need to do to it?
There's a form that the National Trust requires. It's for tax-exempt status for the person who owns the property. And the building would be measured, and then we'll write up, estimate on how much it will cost to restore it.
Now, the building is on the National Registry of Historic Places?
Presently, it's on the National Registry of Historic Places.
So how did, and you did that?
Well, with the assistance of the coordinator, Mr. Marty Perry.
Right. So how did you go about doing that?
Well, I contacted the Kentucky Heritage Council, and and of course Miss Teresa Brown there, and she referred me to Mr. Marty Perry, who's the coordinator, and he assisted me, and they sent me the copies of the form, the 10900, that the NPS form, the National Park Service is used for all projects going on the National Register, and we filled it out with his assistants and got it on the National Register.
Well, now, getting it on the National Register, does that mean it's got to be reserved or should be, or how does that work?
Well, the Rosenwald schools were determined to be endangered species a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the requirements, that they were considered to be worthy of preservation. And
Mm-hmm.
it falls into that category.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so again, as a park,
Yes.
what would you like to see in this park? It would like be a
Baseball fields, soccer fields, anything the community wants to use it for.
okay, sort of like it was in the beginning.
Well, more than that. Would like to build an auditorium there for other presentations. Some of the presentations type presentation would be projects that are going to go on the National Register.
Mm-hmm.
Like we held this one, was put on at Udell Gardens, out there just outside of Louisville. But this school property could be used as a presentation for National Register presentations or any other projects, particularly associated with education.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now when it gets, let's say hopefully it goes forward and it's preserved.
Yes.
Are you going to restore it to the way it looked like as a school with desks and everything?
How it looked in 1966 before it closed,
Right.
since it's a historic project.
Yeah. Do you have any idea where the desks would?
Well, we'll have to acquire some desks. We don't have any desks presently.
Right. Well, now when you were there, what were the old-fashioned desks?
Old-fashioned desks, yes, sir.
Made of metal and had
Had wood.
wooden tops.
Yes, metal
And-
seats, but wood in the seats and wood on where your books go in your room.
Right, right. There was a chalkboard, I assume.
Yes, very good chalkboard.
Yeah, and of course I'm sure you can get one of those
Yes.
pretty easily. But schools they can be such magic places when you were a kid. Well, so you went there from the first all the way through the 8th grade.
Yes.
Well, how did they do that? If one teacher, did she like teach the kids in groups, or how did that work in a one-room school?
Well, you had rows of school chairs.
Okay.
And maybe the first one would be 1st and 2nd grade, and the second would be 4th and 5th grade, and the last two would be 7th and 8th grade.
And so the teacher then would teach to each group of kids. Maybe the first graders would be doing some work, and then she'd talk to the second.
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty difficult to do, I would think.
Thinking back on it, I thought it was quite challenging.
Oh, it would be. I mean, I would think of a teacher, how would you do that? But of course, there were one-room schools all over the country. And what was your favorite subject in school?
Math.
Math.
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do in the Navy?
As an electrician, aviation electrician in the
So
Navy.
math would have helped, I guess,
Yes, it did.
in that as well. So, well, I remember when I was a kid going to school, at the first year, they would varnish the floors. Did they do that there? Do you remember?
I'm not sure as a kid if they varnished them or not, but they had to be very clean.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, who did the kids clean up the school? Did you all help?
We
do
did
that?
during class times. You know, we were there at class, but they had other people would come in and take care of the building. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It wow. And you walked to school, I assume?
Yes, of course.
How far?
About a mile.
Wow. I mean, that's something that kids that's something kids don't know about. So today, wow, that's amazing when you think back about that. So so after the 8th grade, where did you go?
The Lincoln High School.
Went to Paducah Lincoln.
Yes.
And then after that, you joined the Navy after high school.
Yes.
When did you graduate from Lincoln?
In 57, I think
In
so.
57. Yeah. Yeah. That's well. Let's again. Let's give an address if people want to contribute money.
Yes.
Where can they send the money?
To Union Station School, Historic Park Incorporated, and Post Office Box 416, Paducah, Kentucky 42002.
Okay. And then if they wanted to contact you,
You can do that at Union Station School at yahoo.com.
that's your email.
That's email.
Right? Okay.
for it.
Are there any other?
Also, it's www.thehotelmetropolitan.org.
Right. Now, Betty Dobson, who
She's been very nice.
absolutely, and the thing about Betty and you too, this is an example what an individual can do. Just Betty's had a lot of help, and she would
Yes.
say she's had a lot of help.
Yes.
And I'm sure you had a lot of help.
Yes.
But if this comes to pass, it's going to be because of what you did, what an individual, one person can do this. And Betty, and I remember the Metropolitan, I wrote for the newspaper here years ago.
She was telling me about that.
Going over there, and there was this wonderful old building, and she took the lead in getting this building preserved. It's a wonderful old building. So Betty is sort of maybe your inspiration, kind of?
Well, yes, she is. And she's been very helpful. She's allowed me to have a small display there at the hotel when she has events there. And so anyone that's going there now can see some brochures we have about the school project. So that would be helpful if anyone goes there. So, and the National Heritage Council referred me to her to use an almost already existing entity to do the project, and she's been wonderful about it. And I think also, as an African American heritage, that one is in the city. This will be one in the county.
Right, and that's a nice. They complement each other.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Just getting back to some nuts and bolts of this, what are the dimensions of this school?
It's about, we have to go back to the print. We had the picture of the floor plan, but it's about 20 feet something. There it is there. So,
do you know who built it?
No, I don't. I have to pull that up. But
or maybe what it cost to build?
It's about $4,000 to build it. I think it's the cost is listed in Dr. Adams' book about the schools on her book that you can be pulled up from the Heritage Council.
Now, her book, is it available in our public library?
It's online. You can pull it up online, or in the library, either one.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Well, in the Jackson Purchase, where were the other Rosenwald schools?
Sanders was in Paducah, near Park Avenue. Of course, Granville was near Granville.
That's going out
and of
toward
course,
Ballard
Woodlawn is
County.
behind Lonoke.
Right. And you said there was a plaque or something at Woodlawn?
Mrs. Bobby Wiggins has been instrumental. She wrote a book about it. It's in the library. And I understand they're getting a plaque to put it
Well, now, these other three Rosenwald schools in McCracken County, were they similar to this one?
Possibly. I have not seen the pictures of them, but they can be pulled up, I think so, in the book about that Dr. Adams has about it.
Right, right. Well, I think the thing that was so clever is the points of the compass.
I thought that was
like that.
very innovative.
To use natural lighting when
that's what's stated in the bulletin, natural light.
And of course, natural light it's still the best from the sun. But,
Yes, it is.
But I thought that was extremely clever the way they did that.
I did too, so I focused on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, again, from your Navy experiences, you mentioned about swinging compasses of aircraft.
Yes.
That's obvious. The compass is so important to do that. Anyone else you would like to name who has helped you with this? We'll give them some credit.
Well, like I said, Dr. Lottie Leeson Adams, and Miss Ellie Peoples. Miss Ellie Peoples is on our board for the school, along with Mrs. Dobson. And of course, Reverend Russell, he's the son of, he's retired Air Force, he's the son of Reverend Russell, his father, C.T. Russell, that was, had the schools in the county, the churches in the county. And then, of course, you, Professor Craig, and Professor Mulligan at Murray State.
Bill Mulligan.
And
yes.
also Mr. Todd Hatton, he's also been helpful.
Well, I'd like to brag on Todd Hatton. He's a former student of mine.
All right, sir.
Right here. Yes. Really a bright kid.
He's been out and looked at the school, took pictures of it.
You know, I saw Todd. I was down at Murray the other day, and I saw Todd, and we talked, and he mentioned the school as well as the Metropolitan. And Bill Mulligan is an outstanding professor of history at Murray State.
Yes.
In fact, I'll be seeing him in the not too distant future, and I'll bring that up. Bill has done quite a bit of work in the area. For example, at Columbus Belmont State Park, Murray State did some work over there, and he's very interested in historic preservation like that. And it's always good to give other people, credit too for helping out, because we don't do things alone. We have to have help.
It's very inspiring just talking to you and other people about it. Of course, at the Tourist Center here over in Broadway, Miss Mary Hatton over there. It's also been was very inspiring.
Yeah.
And also spoke to even the Civil War Museum.
Oh yeah.
The colonel there, he was. You know,
Well, you know, historic tourism, it's very, very popular, and Paducah has a lot of that.
Yes.
And I think this would make a wonderful complement to the flood wall. I mean, those murals that brings people to town, and I think people come there and they'll want to see the Metropolitan. Then they'd want to see. I mean, I could just see this as a real tourist attraction, a school, because the old one-room schools they're gone.
I spoke to Dr. Adams, Alicine Adams, who wrote the book about the schools. And when she was at Tuskegee, went to the initiative there. I wasn't able to make it, didn't have the funds. And she's very inspiring just to talk to her and to read.
She has been, she came down, I'm trying to think she was here, but she was on the show, on my program,
Yes,
talking about quilts, historic quilts.
Yes.
And that's all part of folklore, and that's such a fascinating part of Kentucky history. But again, getting back to the idea of I'm 62, and I went to a regular school, a one-room school. There were a lot of people who went to one-room schools.
They used these not only in the African-American community, but they were for the whole general public, and they were used because
they were community centers.
Yes, sir.
And that's, you know, churches and schools,
Yes,
that's the community center, and that's the part that would just be, so you look forward to the day when it all gets done.
Yes.
And I certainly hope it will.
Yes.
And as I said, people who watch the program, the money's going to a very good cause.
Yes,
it's money's what it's all about, unfortunately.
It's a 501c3 nonprofit charity.
Right.
So it is under NCS
Right.
list, so anyone can pull it up and verify it and validate it.
Right. Well, we have just about 30 seconds left.
Right.
Let's do the contact number again.
Yes.
If people want to donate,
Yes.
they can go to,
Union Station School at yahoo.com.
that's the email address.
Yes. They can also go to Facebook, and there's a link to PayPal to use credit cards.
Oh, good.
You can go to that.
Okay. And then
Yes.
the other website was the Metropolitan?
Yes, the Metropolitan Hotel, www.thehotelmetropolitan.org.
Outstanding. Thank you for coming, and,
Yes, sir.
and as we go through this, keep us posted, keep us
Well-
updated, and we'll maybe do a follow-up here in a few months and look
Right.
forward to the completion of this project.
We do.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, sir.
My
Thank you
guest
very
today was Manuel Jones. I'm Barry Craig. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
All right.